All right, welcome everybody. It's 6 p.m., July 27th. I call this meeting of the Clear Creek Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that its notice has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. And with that, let's go ahead and move on to our pledge.
Okay, I have some amazing people, professionals that are going to help with the pledge tonight. So we're going to come on up. You want to do the who's going?
Put your hands over your heart, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Now for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Okay, and you may be seated. Well, Shannon, come on up. No. Camia, y'all can't be seated. That's not for you. All right, we always open our meeting with our mission statement, vision, core values. And so I'm going to let y'all read that. Are you okay? You good with that? And I have it.
The mission of Clear Creek Independent School District, the visionary leader igniting learning for all, is to ensure each student achieves, contributes, and leads with integrity in a safe and nurturing environment distinguished by authentic relationships, service before self, and the spirit of exploration.
The vision, empowering every student with a world-class education that ignites passions and fuels endeavors. The core values of CCISD are caring, citizenship, fairness, respect, responsibility, trustworthiness. And the value statement is people, purpose, and promise.
Thank y'all. And we are very honored to have these two special educators opening our meeting tonight and saying the pledges, and we do want to acknowledge them. So if y'all can both stand up here while we share these acknowledgments. We are first acknowledging and celebrating our principal of the year, our secondary principal of the year, Miss Shannon Simons. Yes. Okay, she is currently the principal at Clearview, but previously she's also been the principal at Brookside Intermediate. She's been a science instructional coach specialist, all of the things, a technology specialist. She has been a volleyball coach, amongst many other things. But I would say overall, just always looking for what's best in students, always bringing the best out of them, challenging them, definitely, and making sure that they meet those expectations. And we see the evidence at Clearview, and so excited to have this honor, that you have such an honor. And she is a Clear Lake High School alumni, so we're excited about that. So congratulations, Shannon, and we'll get a picture over here with them. Yay. I'll get a picture with them first. Okay, before you go, we just want to ask, what are you excited about for this school year? She might take a while.
No, I won't. I can't get long-winded, but I really think it's the students on campus. I mean, if you know anything about VIEW, you know that they're our purpose, and so really getting them back on campus. I've been back since July 6th, so each week I get a few more people that join me on campus, and so really getting them to be there and being able to get them excited. We talk about fueling their passions, and so that is the drive of what we do and the long days and things like that. So I think that's what I'm most excited about, and my staff is too. So.
Thank you, Shannon. Congratulations. And I do want to share, so Mark Smith is our elementary principal of the year, but Mr. Smith is retired and he's on vacation, so he's not with us tonight. But former just retired principal at Ferguson Elementary and done some amazing jobs. Mark has been a leader at 6 campuses. Let me make sure I get that. Whitcomb, Goforth, Ross, and Ferguson principalships. So a lot of accolades, and Mark is just known for his passion for students and his sense of humor. I'm going to throw that in. But anyway, so we are so excited for Mark, and so I know he's excited about his new adventures. Well, we do have another recognition that we want to share. And this, you can stay up. This is so exciting, isn't it? So we have the Region 4 Teacher of the Year finalist, Miss Camia Lohman. And she has been named a finalist for the 2027 Secondary Teacher of the Year. And Camia is a proud Clear Creek High School graduate. So now we have a Lake, a Falcon, and a Wildcat who has dedicated more than a decade to education in Clear Creek ISD. She's currently at Clear Springs High School and teaches anatomy and physiology. But I do want to read this. She founded and sponsors the NASA Hunch Biomedical Engineering Program, giving students the opportunity to tackle real-world engineering challenges in collaboration with NASA professionals. Beyond the classroom, she serves as assistant golf coach, leads the Science UIL academic team, and supports numerous other campus initiatives. She does it all with excellence, and she does make it look easy. We are so proud and not at all surprised by her nomination. We'll be cheering her on to win when she wins the Region 4 Secondary Teacher of the Year, and that date, August 6th. So congratulations, Camia. We're going to get a picture. And we'll get a picture. So yeah. So, and Cammy, before you sit down, I know, I have a different question. I thought about this because this morning, Camia actually had a chance to talk to the brand new teachers to the profession. And it was pretty exciting, about 60 people, in just hearing her words of wisdom. Just what if you were going to give advice to brand new teachers in this profession, just one thing that you would share with them?
I mean, what I told them this morning was to lean on the expertise and talents of the teachers around them. And I think, and another thing was to keep a sense of humor, because you just never know what's going to happen. But I think to any of them, just telling them one of the best things about the job is that you never know what's going to come every single day, and it's never boring, and almost like if you just embrace that and just roll with it, it really can make the job even more fun, and but also teaching the students how to be adaptable like that, and show them like, hey, this happened to me, and so I adapt, and just kind of modeling that for them, so that I think is one of the coolest things we get to do as teachers.
So much. Congratulations. We are so honored to have these amazing people. Oh, Aaron, come on up. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. You didn't have, I'm sorry. Yay. Congratulations. That's good. Yes, yes, yes.
All right, congratulations. And the next item is community input, and I don't believe we have any community input tonight. So next up is our information and discussion, population demography.
All right. Thank you so much. And we are excited to invite Chris Poole and Carolyn Couch with PASA, Population and Survey Analysis, and they'll present our spring 2026 demographic study report. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Poole. We got Caroline Couch here, and so we appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know you all have had access to the slides, maybe a version of the digital copy of the report. And so what we hope to do tonight is just sort of hit the high points. It's very, very dense, and so we want to hit the things that we thought were the most interesting here for you guys. So the first slide here is just all of our bright, shiny faces. You're just seeing two of us tonight, and I know that the administration has had contact with several others in our office, but just to know that there are about a dozen of us, and we almost all touch the project during the 4-month process that leads up to that big binder that you guys have seen. The demographic study process, that is that several month process, looks a little like this. The very first thing that we do for any district that we're working for, we have to collect collect background data. It's state data, it's appraisal district data, we build a very robust GIS map. We've brought copies of that, large copies of that, printed out. I mean, all of our clients have them pinned up on the walls with sticky notes and that sort of thing all over them. So we hope that's very helpful. We geocode the student population, and not only do we geocode this year, but we geocode a couple of years worth of data. And that way we can look how K4 moves to B1.5 the next year. We have to determine the ratios of students per home, because if I ask you how many kids are in every house, you might say 2, and that's not the case. And so we'll talk about that. We heavily hit now at this point the alternative educational opportunities, because you guys and every other one of our clients are being very heavily impacted by what we're calling these AEOs. And that's private schools, charter schools, virtual schools, micro schools, any of these other things that are going on where parents are choosing to step away from the traditional ISDs, and that is having a big impact for you guys. We analyze housing and economic trends. Caroline's going to hit on that. We set up 3 district-wide enrollment projection series, and then we look at sort of what that means for the future for the district. Now, I've been doing this with PASA. PASA's been around since 1980, and I've been here, actually, I worked for Clear Creek ISD about 25 years ago, long ago. And so a lot of our clients have been these sort of suburban growth centers. But what we see is a life cycle in those school districts where they are, kind of flat and small, that big high growth, they flatten off a little bit, and then they stabilize and even begin to decline. And there are a lot of statewide, nationwide sorts of things that are going on that are impacting you guys and an awful lot of these suburban districts. And so I want you to know that you're not the only ones, that very many of my presentations this year have been dealing with this very same sort of phenomenon. So we'll kick off just a little bit with demographic trends here, and this is a 6-year enrollment change, 6-year instead of 5-year, because if we go back 5 years, that lands us at 2020 with COVID, and the data was garbage, and so we went back 6 years. And so we're looking at, on the left-hand side, numeric change, right-hand side, percent change for Region 4, and I wish we could fill in that top part right there, because it's Conroe and Willis and Magnolia, and they would all be in red. And what this shows is that in outward pushing from the center of the Houston ISD area is blue that is pushing outward. And so it's blue that is lost, surrounded by this ring of red. But what we might have considered as some of the fast growth, higher growth school districts 10 or 12 years ago, they're beginning to see decline also. And so you can see the numeric and the percent, both of those are interesting to us in various ways. But of course, Clear Creek is seeing decline there. When we look at over the last 10 years or so, what exactly has happened, you can see it graphically in that we had sort of a peak in 2019. Of course, everybody lost student population in 2020. The state as a whole lost about 2.1% of its student population in 2020. Much of it rebounded, and we expected most of it to rebound, but not all of it. And there was a lot more that did not rebound and come back into the ISDs than we had originally anticipated. And some of those students actually also didn't come back in until 2021. And so everybody was impacted a little bit differently. But nonetheless, what we can see here, especially on the right-hand side, is that big drop that you guys saw in 2020. And then there's been loss basically ever since, a little bit of rebound in 21. And so there are about 3 or 4 things that are impacting you guys all at one time. It was sort of this perfect nexus of things that came together. Now, this slide is not something that we normally show all of the time, but it's particularly important to this year. We started getting data back for the fall, and it didn't make any sense for so many of our districts. We had clients that were high growth districts that were losing students, and they were losing students in various pockets of places. It wasn't that the homes didn't build, it wasn't that, any of the things that we might expect. But what happened as we started digging is that we saw a major loss in Hispanic student population, and we can only expect that that is related to immigration. It took us a little while to ferret out what the cause was. The state as a whole lost about 77,000 students this year in ISD student enrollment, and about 62,000 of that was Hispanic student population. And so you can see the top there is the state of Texas divided out by some of the major ethnic groups. And you can see that the one that is the real change here, most of them have a little, bit of red that was the decline for 2020, but that the one that was the big change there was for the Hispanic student population. Now, Clear Creek on the bottom was impacted a little bit. You guys aren't quite as clear cut. You are mainly seeing gains in Hispanic students. But there was a 240 student decrease this year in the Hispanic student population. And so when you think you're going along fine and you're gaining in that population, and all of a sudden you're losing, that's the big delta. It's not just that you lost, you didn't gain also. And so that is one of the parts of the puzzle here that we're all looking at. Another thing that is really impacting you guys and really the state and nation is birth rates. And so we can't knock on doors and ask how many 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds are behind every door, but we can get at the birth rates by zip code of the birth mother. And so I know the zip codes don't line up exactly with the district, but we do some work on the edges there to make it all kind of work out. Take the birth rate, move it forward 5 years, and compare it to the kindergarten enrollment. And so that's what you see here. And really until about 2018, your kindergarten enrollment and your birth rate were really close together. And in a district that's growing very rapidly, the kindergarten enrollment will be above that birth rate because you'll have in-migration. You have people that move in with 2- and 3-year-olds. But what ultimately happens as the district begins to build out is those numbers come together, and then kindergarten drops below that birth rate because not every baby that's born goes to kindergarten in the ISD. However, here we are seeing a big widening that is going on just in the last handful of years. 2018 is sort of the last time that they were really close together. And in 2019, and then since COVID, we can see that number one, the birth rate itself is declining. And number two, the kindergarten enrollment has dipped below that birth rate. So you've got two things going on at one time that are impacting you guys and making for really, really small kindergarten classes that are coming in. So we're comparing at the bottom Region 4 in the state of Texas, and you can see really similar sorts of things, except for the fact that if you're paying attention there, that green line for kindergarten enrollment is substantially below the birth rates in both of those for Region 4 and for the state of Texas. So we'll move on to the next section, hit a little bit about your past and current students. We have to understand what's going on with the kiddos that you've got right now. I mentioned that we geocode your student population, that we've done that for a couple of different years. And so you can see these are two data sets laid on top of the other. And so you can see in the maroon is where you're actually seeing new students at new addresses that are showing up, like in Westland Ranch down in the southwest part there. But that by and large, it's only in a couple of these little tiny pockets of places in the district. Now this table is very interesting to me all of the time. It color codes all of the cohorts by year, kindergarten through 8th grade. We leave out 9th grade. A lot of times there's some oddities in 9th grade. And then 10th grade through 12th grade. And so color codes them by size, blue being smallest, maroon being largest. And so there's several things that are interesting on this table to me. What we can see is that your largest cohorts have been in secondary grade levels here. So that tells me a lot of times that this is a sort of a destination district that people will move in when they've got 3rd and 4th and 5th graders. Your kindergarten class has almost always been the smallest class. But what is very interesting is that right now for the fall, there were 2,277 students, and I went in kindergarten, and I went back and pulled data. The oldest data that we have for the state for every district, for every grade, is 2002 to 2003. And in 0203, the district had 2,284 students in kindergarten. And so you had slightly more in our oldest data set. And at that point, the entire enrollment for Clear Creek ISD was about 32,000 kids. And so those kindergarten classes are very, very small right now. You do have a bit of a bulge in your 11th and 12th grade right now. They are a little bigger. If you look, the 3,094 that was in 12th grade, it's only been topped in 2020 on this table with 3,098, just barely topped. So as those kids exit and are replaced by those tiny kindergarten classes, we'll feel a little bit heavier bump in the next couple of years, or decrease, because of those larger 11th and 12th grade classes. But when you look back at, say, 2018, you had 3,001 12th graders. You were replacing them with 2,837 kindergartners. You lost a few kids, 100, 150 kids, by doing nothing more than just having them get older by a year. But if we look at what's going on now, we've got in 24, we had 3,029 12th graders, and they were being replaced by 2,277 kindergartners. And so that's a big thing to overcome. So in the past, you've been able to overcome that with people moving into the district or people building new homes coming in. But at this point, you're unable to do that because some of those swings are so big. So I mentioned the ratios of students per home, that most people think there are 2. And in actuality, when we look at single-family homes, that ratio is a 0.45. And that's because of things like what we're looking for is how many CCISD students are emanating, current students are emanating from every home. I've got 2 kids, but they're college age. So my house would be factored in as a 0. And so when we get down to it, that ratio is a 0.45. Now, I don't have a lot of historical information for you guys, but almost all of our clients in this last year have seen a decrease in that ratio of students per home. That's because the kids are going, parents are choosing to send the kids elsewhere. And normally it has gone down by 0.02 students in 1 year's time. So in other words, if we measured last year, it might be that you had 0.47 and it dropped. I don't know. I don't have good history for you guys. But that's the average, but it varies widely. And so every time that we project students, every time we project a new home, we have to project when and where new homes are going to be occupied, but we also have to project how many students are going to come from those new homes. And so we have, back in the back, we have a lengthy table that shows for every single subdivision and apartment complex what that ratio of students per home is. You've got 4 developments that have no kids in them. You've got 9 that have fewer than 0.1 students per home. And then on the flip side, you've got 6 that have more than 0.8 students per home. And most of those were built with a median average age between 2009 and 2013. And so as those age on out, those ratios are going to end up coming on down. And so that's very important, and it's not something that most people quite think of and understand. And we don't always include this slide, but to me, it's in the report, and to me it was very telling. This is the ratio of single-family students per home, and you can see where the heaviest ones are. And it might just, with what you know about the district, it might help you understand that it's those newer homes in a lot of situations, and that the center of the district has quite low ratios. So I keep alluding to and mentioning the AEOs, that's what we're calling them, alternative educational opportunities, and they're so very, very important to so many of our clients. Most of our clients are impacted heavily by charter schools because they are, in effect, they feel like and are marketed a lot of times as sort of a free private school, even though they are a TEA public school. And so, but we can see on the map here that there are really only 2 of those charter schools that are inside the district and Navy there. And you guys are more heavily impacted by private schools, which of course are all getting a bump this year with the TIFA funds. And so there are a lot of different sets of numbers floating around, and we've gotten a couple of different sets of numbers from the state and all, but the last time we downloaded data, we could see that the CCISD residents had applied for more than 2,500 TIFA applications, that 658 were granted, but that only 283 of those had previously attended public school, meaning rising 1st through 12th graders that had been enrolled in CCISD. The great question mark, of course, is what is this going to look like in 2 years? You know, is there going to be more money that is poured into that? And so our scenarios of growth would take into account that more students would leave and take advantage of those funds. Now, even though they're granted, that doesn't mean that they'll necessarily be used, because, you know, tuition can still be, the balance of that tuition can still be a barrier to entry. You guys are also trading a lot of students back and forth with everybody that is surrounding you. And this, again, is a slide that's not always in there, but there's quite a bit of movement with Pasadena ISD and with Friendswood ISD, and you're gaining a lot of students from Dickinson ISD. And I would expect this sort of thing to become much more prevalent, because as a lot of our clients, a lot of districts across the state are seeing these declines in enrollment. They are all talking about opening enrollment. They're talking about virtual schools, they're talking about virtual programs where they can still come play athletics and do fine arts and those sorts of things. And so I think there's going to be a whole lot more movement in between the traditional ISDs. The boundaries, in effect, in some ways, are going away. We always get asked about homeschooling, and unfortunately the state of Texas doesn't really track that. We don't end up with good numbers. Some of the numbers that we have seen estimate between, say, 8 and 10% of the student population in the state may be homeschooling, but we don't have good numbers for that. But when we look at sort of over the past, when we're looking at TEA schools, be they charter schools, virtual schools, and just students that are transferring back and forth between ISDs, you can see that there's been an uptick in movement. The bars are the ones that are going out from CCISD, and that sort of snaky line at the bottom is the students that are coming in to CCISD, and there's been a major uptick in both situations. That has been almost exactly the same, an increase of 564 students in one, increase of 600 students in the other. So you're losing more out to these schools, but you're also gaining some in from other ISDs. And then somebody has already forwarded a question to us that was very astute. We have not had this question asked before, and that was on this slide. It was about resident students. And so what we've done here is we have attempted to contact private schools, because that, of course, we have to just contact them to get information. And sometimes the information is good and sometimes it's bad. But the rest of this data normally basically comes from TEA. And so what we are showing is that based on our estimates of students that we can count, that we know that live here, that the district is capturing about 92% of the student population that is there. That is very similar to a lot of suburban districts. The Friscos and the Cadies are all sitting in that 89, 88, 90, 91 sort of percent. The last time we did work for Dallas and for Houston, they sat at more like 70% because of so many charter schools and so many private schools that are impacting those districts. Now, the question that we were asked, though, is what about homeschool? And we don't know how many homeschoolers there are. And so they are not included in this number. But we did go and pull the American Community Survey data. And that is census data, but it's a very tiny sample. And so the margin of error is great. But if you look at that, they have said that 18% of the residents that they think reside in Clear Creek ISD are school-aged. And if you do the math and work that out, then that would mean that they estimate that about 41,482 students that 44,549 students would be in Clear Creek ISD. And if you subtract the ones that we think we know about, that leaves 3,067 that we don't know about, which is 6.9% of the student population. And I just said that the estimates that we had were 7 or 8%. So I can't sit up here and tell you that that's how many homeschoolers you have. We are working backwards and trying to get it maybe kind of an estimate, sort of, okay? It might give you an idea, and we were asked that question, and I thought it was a very, very good question. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline to talk about economy and housing.
All right, good evening, Board President. To begin the housing section, we just first take a quick look at the broader housing market as it provides some important context to the residential development activity that we're going to discuss throughout the rest of this section. So in Clear Creek ISD, the housing market has remained pretty stable over the last year, with home sales increasing from 223 to 265 year over year, while the median home price held relatively steady at around $368,000. At the same time, months of inventory declined from 3.5 to 3.1 months, suggesting that demand remains healthy and available inventory is still somewhat limited. Now, one item that is worth highlighting is that mortgage rate table at the bottom of the slide. Even relatively small changes in interest rates can translate into hundreds of dollars per month in housing costs, which directly affects affordability for prospective homebuyers and ultimately influences the pace at which new residential development occurs in the district. Now, looking at the district's most impactful single-family developments, nearly 60% of projected housing occupancies over the next decade are expected to come from single-family communities. As shown on the map with the actively developing subdivisions in green and the planned developments in blue, we can see that the majority of the activity is concentrated in the southern portion of the district, particularly around League City. Midline is projected to be the district's largest residential development with nearly 2,500 homes over the projection period. Legacy serves as another major contributor with more than 1,600 homes, while Westland Ranch, Samara, and the planned Lloyd development, they also provide additional long-term growth for the district. Smaller communities such as Kemah Crossing, Town Harbor, Davis Harbor, and Clearwater help round out the district's development pipeline. Now, collectively, these projects establish the primary locations where we'll expect future residential growth and ultimately new students to originate. Now, these heat maps take those same developments and illustrates both the timing and the geographic distribution of those that future single-family growth. Now, during the first half of the projection period shown in the map on the left-hand side, the strongest activity is concentrated in the west side developments, where Legacy, Westland Ranch, and Samara are actively delivering homes, while Midline begins its initial phases. By the latter half of the decade, shown on the map on the right-hand side, growth remains strong in those same areas as Midline expands, and the planned Lloyd development also is planned to come online. While new housing is distributed across several planning units, the most significant concentrations do remain in the southern and western portions of the district, with the west side communities continuing to drive a lot of Clear Creek ISD's future residential growth. Now, while single-family housing remains the primary source of your residential growth, multifamily development also represents an important component of the district's housing outlook, accounting for nearly 39% of the projected housing occupancies. Currently, 4 multifamily communities are under development, including projects in Clear Lake, Kemah, Friendswood, and League City. Beyond those active developments, the district has 2 additional planned communities and several longer-term redevelopment opportunities that could support future apartment and mixed-use housing in the future. Compared to single-family development, multifamily activity is more geographically dispersed and generally follows your major transportation corridors, your employment centers, and your commercial districts. These projects broaden the district's housing inventory while helping to accommodate continued population growth. Now, just bringing everything together, Clear Creek ISD is projected to add approximately 12,500 new housing occupancies over the next decade. About 61% of that growth comes from single-family housing and built-to-rent communities, while nearly 39% comes from multifamily development. Looking at the annual projections in the table down at the bottom, Year 1 appears relatively modest, but that's largely due to the timing of this project as well as the district's largest developments still being in early phases. Several major single-family communities are only just beginning home deliveries, as well as active multifamily projects have not progressed far along enough to start having occupancies yet. before the first projection period, or the first projection year is over in October of this year. But after that initial year, annual housing activity increases and remains relatively steady throughout much of the decade before gradually tapering as those larger communities mature. But overall, the district maintains a healthy and well-balanced residential development pipeline, with both those single and multifamily housing continuing to support future enrollment growth. And then with that, I'll hand it back over to Chris to talk about your student projections.
Okay. So this slide here is going to hit on just a few of the factors that go into housing. When I've done this for 25 years here, and it used to more or less be houses times students plus your current kids, and you end up with projections. And there's so much more of it that goes into it at this point. Most of this stuff is just sort of a reminder, but if we start at 12 o'clock there with new housing construction, that new housing that Caroline just talked about is expected to yield between 300 and 500 students per year as those new homes are coming on. But like I talked about just a minute ago, if we're exiting out 12th graders and bringing in itty tiny kindergarten classes, we may lose 700 or 800 or 900 students just by doing that, and so that means continued loss. Birth rates, you can see the line go down and the kindergarten class size go down below that. The aging of the student population that I just mentioned, right now with those large high school classes leaving, puts you at a disadvantage when you're trying to capture new students from new housing construction. In and out migration, we talked about that with those AEOs. Regeneration of established neighborhoods. We used to look for this and occasionally see this, and I have not, probably in the last 2 or 3 years, worked on a project where we saw regeneration occurring in the established neighborhoods, I think largely because of interest rates. Who's going to give up that 3% interest rate to move down the street for a higher payment for a smaller home? And so when we look at what we consider established neighborhoods, i.e. those that are no longer building homes, and we look this year compared to last year, you lost 823 students in those established neighborhoods. And when we look last year to the year before that, you lost 855 students. And so when I pull the students by grade that are in all of these existing homes, it is almost a perfect line from kindergarten, from 12th grade down to kindergarten, that your 4 smallest classes in those existing neighborhoods are in K through 3, and the 4 largest are in the high school grades. And so unfortunately, not a lot of regeneration there unless we see a massive swing in interest rates. The AEOs, we've talked about those. We're not aware of any new facilities coming online at the moment, but that is something that we all have to be very, very mindful of, because that can, a new charter school drops in, it can impact you guys by hundreds of students very, very quickly. And then, of course, the economy is one of those things that we're going to have to we always have to continue to watch: economy and interest rates. And so earlier, like I mentioned, we do come up with 3 scenarios of growth. We have our primary scenario of growth there, that 10-year scenario in the dashed line. And then we have an accelerated and a reduced. And so they're all down, of course, and we do go ahead and project 10 years forward. We know that the first few years that we're working on are much more likely to be more correct, but we do, since it takes so long to make facility changes and attendance zone changes, we do want to know where we think we're headed, even though this data is going to have to be continued to be reassessed all of the time. And so the green there, you might see that the green, between the scenario, the primary scenario, and that reduced scenario is a bit wider than the blue there on the top. And so that downside is more of a possibility of more charter schools, more funds being poured into TIFA, and more students coming out of Clear Creek ISD. So we do then take all of that data and put it in our planning units, and we've divided the district into little tiny portions of the district. We call them planning units, and they're our organizational scheme, and they're scattered throughout any of the documents that you have in front of you, or any of the maps. That's just sort of the way we organize all of the data. And we have their data projected by grade group, by year, for each one of those planning units. And so this just highlights a little bit of the gain and loss over the 10 years. So you can see in red where we might see some gain, and of course it hits the hotspots map that Caroline showed with the new housing, but that quite a bit of loss expected in most of the rest of the district. Now, we always geocode the students, like I said, and we start with, from our projections, we start from a standpoint of where the students reside. That doesn't always mean that's where they're attending school. They're transferring for programs, or they're transferring, they go to school with a teacher or mom or something like that. And so most of our maps will show you resident students. Most of our tables will try to account for how many students you have transferring around right now. So the tables are enrolled students, so they don't always line up, and we try to show resident versus enrolled. So if you ever have a question, keep that in mind. But we then take those planning units, and these are the resident students, so it's not exactly going to look like the enrollment that you guys had a little while back. But you can see they're color-coded based on the growth and decline over the 10-year time frame. And mainly it's Landolt and Campbell and Gilmore to an extent that where we would be seeing increases, of course, that's where the new housing is coming in. And those ratios for the new housing sometimes are higher. And then we're seeing losses, of course, throughout most of the rest of the district. And then when we look at that and compare it to capacity, utilization levels, and when we try to take into account the numbers of transfers that you're looking at, you can see that the blue, or any shade of blue, is 70% utilized and below, and that we do begin to highlight sort of a peachy pink and then that brighter red when you are getting a very full facility, and so that would occur at Campbell and Landolt. And then here you see a lot more blue. And then the thing that's important to me is to look overall at the capacity that you guys have and the total projected student population. We are showing about 22,000 seats, about 17,000 students now, and a projection of just under 15,000 10 years out, if we're going to go ahead and look all 10 years out. So there should be plenty of space to move some things around and maybe make some facility changes in the future. The intermediates and the high schools, it's sort of the same song, second and third verse here. Brookside with some growth, and Creekside relatively flat. And then because of that there's growth, and then they're being acted upon, though, by some of those existing subdivisions and those numbers that are in those existing subs. And so you can see that we're expecting about at least 50 student declines over the 10-year time frame in all of the rest of those attendance zones. Same thing here, nobody's in the red really, and so there is blue and some additional space at some of these facilities. About 10,500 for capacity for intermediate students, about 8,800 students now, about 7,700 students in the future, so plenty of space there. And at the high school level, it's very similar sort of thing. Clear Springs gaining just a little bit there. Again, you got a lot of housing in there, but it is being acted upon by other forces. And then loss at all of the rest of the high schools there. And when we account for the transfers, then we can see that Clear Springs is fullish, 104, 105, 106%. But overall, there's plenty of capacity to handle those students. We're looking at 13.5 for a total capacity when we look at Horizons and ClearPath and Clearview, those other sorts of things. And we've got just under 13,000 students, and we're projecting about 11,000 high school students in the future. So the key findings, I think we've talked about these an awful lot. The aging of the student population, students from new housing still being a factor, but not as much as all of these other factors that seem to all coalesce and be affecting you guys in the last 5 or 6 years. Birth trends down, kindergarten enrollment very small and below that birth rate. And then these alternative educational opportunities that have been so impactful for school districts across the state. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions. We were trying to move with a purpose. I know you all have things to do tonight.
No, that was a lot of great information. Absolutely. So
Good.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up. Any trustees, questions, comments? Anyone? Go ahead.
On slide 9, the kindergarten enrollment and birth trends, Region 4 and Texas look like they're going to get a bump in the coming years, and we're not. Any kind of reason for that?
That's just what showed up in the data, and it's showing up in an awful lot of the slides. Of course, the state data is every time we create a slide like that, but we are just seeing that. I don't have a real good reason as to why, but you guys, with your age of housing and your new homes flattening out and declining over time, we're not seeing that just in the data itself.
Okay, and then one more question on slide 15. Was it 15? Maybe it was the next one. No, it was, I'm sorry, 19.
Okay.
No, it was 15. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I remember now what I wrote down. So I remember we got a list of all of the TEFA applications, and we were really high on that list. And then it looks like 658 were granted. How does that compare to other districts of kind of our size, our location?
Nothing about it surprised me. I haven't gone and done a good comparison of, say, pulled, well, Katie's larger than you guys at this point, but I don't think I've seen one that I've looked at here recently, and of course, it's only been the last couple months, that's been, like more than 1,000. Some of them that don't have private schools sitting in their confines, the outlines of the district have 30, so the numbers are very, very small. So nothing about that surprised me. We did want to drill down into how many had previously attended public schools before, because that's so very, very important, especially in a situation where you guys are fairly rife with private schools. So it's funding the enrollment of the kids that are there to start with, and then the question will be, in the future, of course, what sort of additions and additional capacity will be made available in those private schools.
And then just a big thank you. I felt like the presentation and the data were very thorough.
Good,
and
thank you.
enjoyed digging into it. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, great question. Right.
I'd just like to thank you for including the data on the Midland development. I think that's going to have a significant impact on the district. We've been waiting for that for a long time, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Questions? Comments? So thank you all very much for being here. My question is, how frequent do other districts, or how often should districts do these surveys?
A lot of our clients that are, so I'll answer this in two different ways. We have people that come to see us when they say, we need to build a new middle school and we don't know how big to make it. Mm-hmm. And it's almost sometimes a one and done or once every 5 years sort of a thing for them. For our clients that are experiencing a lot of change, it used to be that they're growing very, very rapidly, and now it's beginning to be not growing very, very rapidly. It can be an annual sort of thing or in every other year. We can go in and do sort of a revision in year 2, where we geocode the students. We'll hit the high points on the ones that we're starting to turn dirt, the developments, look at where the kindergarten came in, look at maybe the Hispanic student where that came in, adjust some things, not do a full thing, but then an update. But then again, by that 3rd year, we feel like the first data that we did is too old, that we need to go back and revisit everything again.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because like the regeneration, ballpark, do you know how much of our district falls into that kind of regeneration subdivisions? Because I grew up here, lived here since the 80s, and I know my parents still live in the house that I was in high school.
Right.
And so how much do you know, ballpark, how much of our district falls into a regeneration?
Like a percent of how many are existing homes?
Yeah, because, when you're looking forward and you have like old Clear Lake City, right? A lot of those residents have been there forever and ever and ever. And you got an elementary school right there, and it's great for walking, and, it's just a great community. So for a subdivision like that, that's established, for regeneration purposes, how much of that is, I guess, that factor of looking forward? Because you had said that looking at statistics, there was a bump of 800, in those, K through 3 grades, and now we're seeing those are older students now, and so we're not getting that capture. We don't have the young students in that.
So I'm not sure exactly where your question is. We can get at and do have, and I should have it in front of me, the proportion of the district that is existing homes. Mm-hmm. And so that would tell us which of those areas that we would be looking for to have regeneration in them. So we classify all of the subdivisions. We draw little polygons. They all have subdivisions. They're all color-coded. If they're blue, they're existing. And so I can go in and pull that data, and did in working on this model, pull that data, and that's when I said I could look and see a straight line from 12th grade down to kindergarten. So for the foreseeable future, we don't see any change going on in that area, because, like I say, there's almost 1,000 kids lost this year, and almost 1,000 kids lost last year in those existing homes. So we look for that. We look for the times when the kindergarten is larger than 5th grade, or kindergarten is larger than 4th grade. But that's not occurring, and it hasn't been occurring. It didn't surprise me at all that it was not occurring here, because I haven't seen it in any time. I think it's going to take a big interest rate shift. But for any, if it would help you guys out anyway for the attendance zones, we could sort of measure 78% of it is in existing homes or something like that. If that would help you kind of understand and get a feel for what you think might occur in the future. We can only look out so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, we've got, everything that's on, I think it's slide 38 that talks about, all of the findings where you kind of put it all. And then we've got this aging out.
Yeah, right.
We're a district that's been around for 70 years. So,
Right.
There's a lot of families that have lived here forever and ever.
And I will say, when they regenerate in the areas that we had seen regeneration in, and I'm talking 20 years ago, they never get to the ratios of students per house that they had before, by a bit, by a lot. And so it's, in the early 2000s, a lot of our suburban districts, the ratios were in the 0.7s, 0.8 even almost in Katy for an average. And that was average district-wide, existing and new homes. And so now, of course, that ratio is lower, it's coming down, but that over time, that 0.8 begins, and every subdivision is so very different that I wish we could say it's always going to drop to half of what it was at the peak. And that's kind of what we see, is that it drops to half of what it was at the peak. Yeah. But now that's being impacted by other things that aren't just people staying there until their kids graduate and they decide to move into a condo because they're tired of mowing the grass. And so when that happens, though, that ratio may, if it was a 0.8 and becomes a 0.4, it may only hit 0.57 or something like that again in the future. It never returns to that 0.8.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I think we all appreciate you for diving so deep. There was, and real quick, there was one other thing that I just want to highlight that you had mentioned was in your research, you dug deep to see when our kindergarten levels were this low in the past, 2002, 2003.
2000, that's as far back as I could go.
Yeah. So when we're looking at the 2,000 students, that are kindergarten,
right,
you're going back almost 23
right.
years,
Yes.
So it's alarming. So, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about the homeschooling number, and the lack of knowing what it actually is. I mean, according to your what you told us, it could be as high as 3,000. It could
Right.
be anything below that. Is there any appetite for the state to try to follow up and start, actually, to me, that's an accountability issue, that there
I agree.
should be some recording of, if a parent says they're homeschooling, the state should have some kind of accountability measure to make sure that is.
We have a huge appetite for that to be looked at very carefully by the state, or at least accounted for. And all of our clients do, because it's such a question mark. But the way it shows up for us is that decrease in ratios of students per home. And so when I say that all of our clients this year dropped by 0.02 students per year, if we had data for last year and the year before and the year before, we saw decreases in all but one that was in the Panhandle. I think absolutely everybody else dropped by at least that number. And so that's how we capture it. We can't say that it's going to be, it's exactly 3,182 kids, because the state doesn't track it for us. There's no way that we can get at it.
Thank you. Yep, another question.
Just a quick question. Sure. On slide 30, it shows the resident students, where you show that you're able to geocode them, just to understand if they're resident or where they're enrolled. How early are we able to identify even someone who would be a future student that has just been born? How quickly can we get insight into?
They have to be enrolled in the district. And so that's where we can get the data from the district. We have their addresses, and they can be EE kids that are, EC kids that are 3 years old or something. But we can't get at them any earlier than that. And so that's why we have to turn to birth data to try to understand.
I know we're doing things that we've never had to do before,
Right.
to try to recruit students. And when I think about the proudest moments of people who live in our community is when their child is born within our district, at a facility, a hospital, and the chance for us to connect with a parent through a partnership with a hospital that sends a congratulatory card or that sends them
CCISD class of
the
2042.
first, yeah, the first onesie that has a world-class star on it.
Right.
Because I think the sooner that we brand, a child to let them know that we are so excited about them, that we have been tracking them since they arrived.
Right.
Maybe not be a pelican, but I think we can at least find a star that would fit them. But I do think if we think about partnerships and collaborations, and we do a lot with our medical facilities and hospitals, we work closely with places of worship. All of those are organizations and entities that may reach a family, may reach a child before we would see them a few years later. And the chance to think about what those partnerships could look like. I just think their experience and their opportunities within our district and our ability to reach them before they make a choice without even realizing what it is that they would be missing is just something that's probably worth exploring more.
We have a person that basically the majority of what she does is track these AEOs, and she's neck deep into it all the time. And from her understanding, she's heard some, and I don't know how much hard data she has on this, but with some, has heard at least rumor of some charter schools reaching into the daycares and small, 2 and 3 year olds and partnering at that level before they even, would see the kids. So along those same sorts of lines, I think the charter schools may be thinking that that's the way to go about it too.
All right, go ahead, another question.
Chris and Caroline, thank you for the information. I think, the trustees, my colleague said it before, this is probably one of the most comprehensive demographic reports we've had in a while. So thank you for the information, because it's much needed, especially with some of the decisions that we have coming up. When I look at slide 12, how does our data match up with other districts, especially other districts that are our size?
A lot. So because of those birth rates and the kindergarten enrollments that are flattening out, that's occurring in so many places. I do not know how many times I have said the words itty tiny kindergarten class this year, but it's a lot. What is different about your color on your chart here is that cluster of maroon. Well, I'm from College Station, so it's maroon. They're in those secondary levels. We very often will see large classes that work through kind of like a snake, first, second, third grade, and they'll work all the way through, and will be a bulge of students that are moving through. And it's when a lot of development came into an area and everybody moved in at the same time and they sent their kids all to school at the same time. But you guys being very heavily clustered like that, a lot of our districts that are more desirable, sort of move up into the district sorts of things look like this. But you did not have that bulge moving through. But you did have the very small kindergarten class, like absolutely everybody these days.
And my next question, kind of leading from that, is there a way to drill down how many students come back to us? Because I know, it's prevalent, especially at the K through 5, for people to homeschool and things of that nature. But then I know that we get X amount of those students that come back to us as, they hit intermediate, want to participate in our fine arts, sports, things of that nature, activities that they can't necessarily do at the homeschool level. Is there a way to drill down and find out how many of those kids come back?
The way that shows up for us is the attrition and retention rate that we see when we look at your 5th grade in 1 year and how that number grows or declines to 6th grade. And so that's built into everything that this is a section of a table that measures all of that and then carries it forward. And so we have seen in a few of our clients recently where they would have this sort of bulge of kids move through, and then it muddies at the secondary level just for the last few years. And so we have wondered if it's exactly what you're talking about, where it's a whole lot easier to teach basic math sitting at the kitchen table than it is calculus and German 4 or whatever. And so do they come back to play football, to be in band, and to do those sorts of academic things? And so as that has been occurring in your district in the last handful of years, that attrition and retention is getting pushed forward into the data for the next 10 years.
And then I heard you say that you have a colleague that all she does is basically track
God bless her, yes.
daycare information. Is there any way we can get some of that?
So it's not that she tracks daycare information. She
Okay.
tracks the TEA information, the private schools, does all of it. I highly encourage you to look at the appendix for Chapter 2. There's a very, very thick bunch of information that a couple of people in the office, she and another one of our GIS people, work on very consistently. It's very detailed information about how many students are going out to this charter school and out to that charter school and different grades and all sorts of different ways to look at it and how you compare to the state and how the things have trended over time. And I think you'll find some really interesting information in there.
All right, great question.
Okay.
So another question just crossed my mind actually on slide 28 with the 10-year forecast. You had said that right now we're at a capture rate of about 91 to 92%.
Mm-hmm.
Are all your forecasts based on maintaining that?
It's based on, no, not as a percent. We don't do the data assuming that you're going to have a percent like that. If we know that there are additional charters that are coming in next year, the next year, or something like that, then those get worked into the model. We're going to pull 750 kids out with a new charter school or something like that. After those first couple of years, we do not know of any. We read all of the amendments and try to understand them, but the amendments are very broad. We're going to ask for the ability to open a new school generally in this area. And the proximity is so important because they don't provide transportation. And so that is in there in that way. But then we also, I mentioned the attrition and retention beyond about the first couple of years, rely more heavily on attrition and retention and look at how those numbers have changed due to these AEOs in the past couple of years, and have to assume that those attrition and retention at certain grade levels are going to continue at a similar rate or might increase due to additional TIFA funds. And so that it is part of what goes into that bottom green line versus that dashed line there. But it's not that we assume that you're going to always capture 90%. It doesn't work that way backwards.
Okay. Yeah, I know you, like on this slide, it mentioned fluctuations in mortgage rates, housing construction, new charter plans, birth rates, and some of those things. So that wasn't in there. And I know that we've talked about, that 90, that's a great number for us.
It's a very good number
for districts. Yeah. To have that 91 to 92%. And you had mentioned some of the HISD areas are at like 70%.
Right. And most of the ones that are 96 and 7% just don't have any other schools inside the confines of their district.
Yeah. And so I wondered, like with one of the slides he had pulled, which was slide 9, that where you see Region 4 in Texas with this big gap and CCSD has a small gap.
Smaller gap, right.
Is it because of that 91%? Is that a factor
Yes,
in there as well?
Right.
So I think whenever we're having those conversations about district goals and, the communications and, the onesies, capturing them, I think it's a great idea. I do. But because again, we're trying to plan for what are the factors that we can control.
Right.
And so what do those goals look like? And so I think that 91's a good one. So one more question.
And Chris, I just had one more question because something, you said it a couple times and I was just curious what you might have seen in other districts. When we were looking at slide 16, for example, when we were talking about, students that were transferring in and everything and the open enrollment, but you said something, and you said it a couple times, like usually those boundary changes and everything normally take time. What are you seeing in other districts.
As to boundary changes that they're doing or facility changes that they're doing?
Correct.
Okay. So what I'm seeing is, so I think the first time I heard the word marketing was in A-Leaf ISD maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was pre-COVID. And there's a realization that this is real. I think at this point that we are seeing those birth rates decline, and the charter schools aren't going away. I know when the charter schools began, I've worked for PASA for a couple of decades, and I thought, that's annoying, and now it's such a force of nature that we have to deal with. And so I think there's a real realization that a few may close. We had a virtual school close, very large virtual school close just here, and a virtual school can impact anybody in the state. You don't have to be anywhere close to it. And so I'm not going to say that once they're here all of the time, because that's not the case. They can close, but by and large, as a force, that they're here to stay. And I think they're even broadening in some respects. We hear rumors of micro schools. Groups of parents get together, and 2 or 3 of them are teaching in a space. I had a friend that did this at COVID. She had a kindergartner that was starting. She'd been a teacher, and she taught 6 little kindergarten boys. They had a Christmas play. They had a graduation at the end, the whole shebang. And it's the same kind of thing that several of them will get together and do this schooling and shared homeschooling, where it's not so much the onus on one parent. And maybe one can sit down and teach calculus at the table, who knows? But I think there has been, since COVID, of course, a real fluidity in where parents are choosing to send their kids to school. And as a result, the districts are trying to figure out how to manage that, how to work with parents, meet them where they are. What is it that the parents are after? Providing different sorts of out-of-the-box thoughts in their facilities, and then also having to look at, do we close some of the facilities that are older? I mean, nobody likes to do that sort of thing, but you have to look at how the facilities are all being used and how the enrollment is there. And, like I say, when we look at this slide, if everybody opens up their boundaries, you're going to trade kids back and forth. It may not necessarily mean that an additional 3,000 kids are going to come in the door. And so it's a difficult time for everybody. We've given 2 presentations in the last year at TASA and at Midwinter, TASA-TASB and at Midwinter, about basically where have all the kids gone.
All right, great questions. Again, thank you so much.
You're
This
welcome.
is an amazing study, and I appreciate it. We all appreciate it very much. So
Okay.
thank
Well,
you.
you guys let us know what else you need. I think Allison knows where to find us. And let us know how we can help. Get here to the end there.
Perfect. Thank you all very, very much. Great. All right, next up is our district update.
Okay, thank you, President Cottrell. And just getting started with the new school year, summer activities, nearly 400 teachers participated in curriculum launch sessions this past week, signaling a strong start to the fast approaching school year. I had the opportunity to visit sessions on our new Blue Bonnet math curriculum, and the hard copy resources are significant, which will provide a strong support for school-to-home partnerships. And this morning, we welcomed, as we mentioned earlier, with Ms. Lohman, around 60 first-year teachers to CCISD at Clear Springs High School. And on Wednesday, we will roll out the red carpet for 327 experienced teachers and professional staff who will be joining our team. And I would like to thank the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce for hosting our educators for a special luncheon on Thursday, capping off this new teacher week. And back to school activities from kindergarten enrollment, which we're working hard on. I can tell you, to band camps, there are many signs of a new school year. Our district website has been updated with school supply list and more, and back to school forms open on July 30th. August 11th is the first day for pre-K and kindergarten, 6th and 9th grade, those transition grades, and then everyone is back on August the 12th. It's coming soon.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Engel. Looking forward to all the kids getting back, right? All right, next up is our consent agenda. Any items anybody would like to pull?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to pull items 7 and 17.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Cunningham. All right, any other items anybody would like to pull? Go ahead.
Can I pull 24?
All right. Thank you, Trustee Cheka. Any other items? All right.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda minus items 7, 17, and 24.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Cunningham. All right. Motion is on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. No opposed.
And Mr. President, item 7, I see Mrs. Aragon out in the audience, and I did it in finance, but I wanted to do it on the record and just recognize her department, 100% collection, I think, and just the fantastic, job that they've done, especially with kind of the mailbox snafu and things like that. They fielded some angry, taxpayers, and we wanted to thank them for just the job that they did to quell those issues and get those taken care of, and just the job that the department's doing. So thank you.
So we have talked about this in finance, but the presenter just said that marketing is a term that hasn't been used in the schools until very recently. Well, customer service is another one of those. So thank you for that. And I think that's the next level in what we do as schools, is having that high level of customer service so that when somebody walks into any of our departments, they feel welcome and they know they're in the right place. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Any other comments? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
And Mr. President, I move that the board approves the superintendent's recommendation of acceptance of the 2025 tax collection report.
Thanks, Trustee Cunningham. All right. Motion's on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. And no opposed. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Next item is 17.
Mr. President, I know Dustin's in the audience, and he heard me say this also at finance, but Canvas is just such a great, platform that we're using currently. I think I highlighted that, my college student has actually taught my dad, in his doctoral classes, like how to maneuver and set up his exams and his lessons and things of that nature. So here you have the generations, right, working with each other, but it all stems from just the experience that he had, that K through 12 experience. And so these are the types of things that our students are exposed to, that they're using at the next level. And then they've used it so much to where they can navigate and, teach some of us that are dinosaurs how to use those programs. So I just wanted to highlight, as we're approving Canvas, that it's college and post-college, type learning platform. So thank you for bringing that, to the district.
Yeah. Thanks, Trustee Cunningham. Any other comments? No. Thank you. All right. Entertain.
Mr. President, I move that the board approves the superintendent's recommendation for renewal of contract 2022.514 digital learning platform.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Cunningham. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. No opposed. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Item 24.
So on this one, just kind of was looking at some of the numbers as far as the purchase price and then what we're selling the items for, and just kind of wanted to go through what that process looks like as far as when you guys negotiate price with the different vendors who are bringing food into the schools.
Whenever we decide that we want to bring in product, that's based off of the demand of kids, what they have said in surveys and things that they want. All right. From that point, we look at how can we get that product. Are we going to spend enough? Is there a contract? I go to Mr. Cruther and say, hey, do we have a contract? Do we have an ILA, something like that, where we can get this product? If not, it's put out to bid. Whenever we put out to bid, we open it up to everybody. So in this case, we received two products or two vendors that gave us pricing. One of them was, I can't remember the name of it. It's a mom and pop deal. They're not a brand name. And Crumble. And Crumble was what the kids asked for. And they gave us a price per cookie. And that's what we brought to y'all. Y'all approved it. And that's what we've been going on. Every year, that when we do a child nutrition bid, we can't say 5 years. The federal government won't allow that. They will allow 1 year with 4 renewable options, which is what we're doing in this case. We're bringing it forward for another renewable option. When it comes time to renew that, we contact the vendor and say, hey, time to renew. Do you want to renew? Are you happy? Or we're happy. Let's, do you have any price increases? For 2 years after the initial bid, this being the third one, they have not come back with any prices increases. Now, how it works when we set a price that we're going to charge the student, there's 2 ways we look at this. The first is, the easiest thing is that because any product we sell that's not a reimbursable meal is considered competitive foods, because it's competing against a reimbursable meal, our competitive cost, food cost, cannot, as compared to revenue, cannot be more than the program food cost. Our program food cost runs about 45% of the revenue that we receive for program revenue. So we have to set whatever the item is below 45%. It can't be above, because the program can't be, the feds look at that as the program is covering the cost of the non-program foods. Another thing that we look at is what we take any food item that's sold that's not part of a reimbursable meal, it's the competitive foods, and convert it to what we call an equivalent meal. And we take that equivalent meal, we know how much it costs us for everything but the food, and there's a dollar amount there, and that gets added to the cost of the food. So we look at those 2 numbers. Is the calculation with the food cost and the other cost, that gets us a charging price, but is that 45% or less than, or more, or less than what we need to be? So we go with the one that fits. If it's not, then we have to bump up the price to where it's less than what it costs for program meals.
I guess my concern was when I looked at kind of the price and what we're, not necessarily what the kids are paying, but what we're paying price-wise. Typically, when these vendors give us bids, are they giving us any type of discount for basically buying in bulk?
Some.
Because I don't feel like the numbers
I
here
will tell you,
really
this
discounted.
one, when it first came out, we looked at it and it's like, that's not much different than what they're charging at the store. Now, you look at our Chick-fil-A, you look at our Subway, our other two branded products, yes, we're getting it for a little bit less, not much.
Not much, yep.
And we have to charge more than what they sell it at the store to meet those criteria that we have set anytime we set a price. Crumble is not, and right now, you're right, they are charging you, when you walk into their store, less than what they're charging us.
Right.
But we're paying for packaging costs, and we're paying for delivery to 5 high schools 3 times a week.
Okay.
So they have all that figured in to that cost. So yeah, that's why it's a little more than what you walking.
That was just my concern is when I looked at the other two, there was a slight discount, not like you
Yes,
said,
ma'am.
not a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
But then on Crumble, it didn't seem to really be a discount.
That is one of the bad things about doing branded products is those vendors have their profit margins that they're going to stick to. They have a little wiggle room. They don't have much. We bring it in and we have to charge more than what you can they charge at their location, because we are now adding extra cost onto those products. I will Chick-fil-A, when we first started with them, they gave us a number. Well, a year later, they came to us and said, we're going to have to go up. We really don't want to, but Chick-fil-A Corporation has come to us, and because we put them to I think they're number 2 in the nation in sales for what they call, I think it's catering sales. They're number 2 behind a store up in Dallas with the numbers that we're giving them. So it went up big radar, and Chick-fil-A was also subsidizing some of the stuff. So they saw their numbers, they said, we have to go up. Some of the other franchisees in the area found out how much we're doing. So they said, we got to go up on this price. Corporate forced that on them,
Okay.
and corporate may be running a deal at Crumble right now that says, hey, let's do this deal for a while, so that's kind of how all that works.
Yes, go ahead.
So I know with Chick-fil-A, they take on a portion of the risk on that for unsold product. Is it the same with Crumble?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
that kind
That's-
of works
that- that's
into
pretty
cost as well.
standard.
So we're
Yeah.
protected in unsold product.
Now, the good thing about Crumble is, say we got 100 at Clear Creek High School today, and we sold 50 of them. Well, those would hold over to the next day. Between today and tomorrow, we can probably sell the rest of them. Whereas Chick-fil-A, Subway, no. I mean, they have a certain window that you have to have them sold by, and we're pushing it.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say this is a great example of the local businesses getting to do business with CCISD. And so I'd just like to highlight that because I know that comes up from time to time, and getting more businesses involved.
Yes.
And so thank you for that.
Both Crumble and Chick-fil-A are the 2 franchisees that are residents of Clear Creek.
Perfect. Thank you all very much. Any other questions? None. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move to approve the recommendation of superintendent for the renewal of contract 2024.820 desserts for high school campuses with the League City Crumble for the period beginning September 1st, 2026 through August 31st, 2027. The estimated contract value, $150,000.
Thank you, Vice President Cheka. Motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. And no opposed. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next item is our district compensation plan discussion.
Thank you. And Ms. Benzine and Dr. Branch will go back over the compensation recommendation and for consideration for board approval for the 26-27 compensation plan.
Okay. Good evening. Administration evaluated multiple compensation scenarios while balancing three priorities, which were recognizing the contributions of our employees, maintaining competitive salaries, and preserving the district's long-term financial stability. Based on those considerations, administration is recommending the following. For classroom teachers and professional support staff, a 1% increase of market median, which is an increase of $725 plus step adjustments. A 2% increase for paraprofessional and auxiliary staff, a 1% increase for other employees, and then a $5 per day increase for substitute teachers or substitute staff. This recommendation reflects one of the most challenging decisions in developing the 2027 budget. We recognize that our employees have experienced continued increases in the cost of living, while at the same time the district continues to face significant financial pressures. As we've discussed throughout our budget workshops, our district continues to experience structural budget challenges driven by declining enrollment, rising operational costs, and limited growth in state funding. That requires us to carefully balance expenditures with long-term sustainability. But at the same time, our ability to recruit and retain high-quality employees is essential to student success. This recommendation reflects that balance. It recognizes employees while remaining within a compensation plan that the district can reasonably support as we continue implementing additional strategies to address the structural deficit.
Our employees, of course, remain the district's greatest investment. Every day they serve our students with professionalism and dedication despite increasing demands and continued workforce challenges. While we recognize that a 1 to 2% increase does not fully offset inflation or rising household expenses, it represents a commitment to continue investing in our employees within the district's financial capacity. Competitive compensation remains one of the most important tools for attracting and retaining quality teachers and staff. Although compensation is only one factor employees consider, it certainly remains an important component to remain competitive.
And I did want to make one correction on the memo included in the packet under auxiliary and paraprofessional, the chart with the financial calculations. It says 1%, it should be 2%. So that's one area I didn't modify. But the cost is provided is for a 2% increase for paraprofessional and auxiliary. So with that, we believe this recommendation strikes an appropriate balance between recognizing our employees and protecting the district's long-term financial health. It reflects responsible stewardship of taxpayer resources while continuing to invest in the people who make the greatest difference for our students. And at this time, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you both. Then I'll open it up. Trustees, questions and comments? Go ahead.
I didn't have a question, but I just want to say thank you. I know that this is a lot to sit down and put to paper, and adding that step in, I think, is really important for our teachers. And so looking at that chart, you know, it's a lot of calculations went into that. And so I just want to say thank you. I think that it's going to kind of help keep some of our teachers there, which I know we're trying really hard to make sure that retention is there. And then hopefully recruiting new teachers from other districts when they see kind of every year you'll get that little bump no matter what happens as far as state funding or anything moving forward. So.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? No, go ahead.
Ms. Benzai and Dr. Branch, thank you. I know discussion just about strategy for our budget is something that is likely daily or multiple times a day. As we navigate reduced resources and constraints that have ultimately been imposed as a result of no adjustment, truly, to public education across the state of Texas. And I know there are a number of narratives. I think we owe it to our community to continue to talk about the fact that the decisions that we're making in CCISD reflect the values and the commitment to education in our community with our stakeholders. And while that's something that we're committed to, it's not something we've seen reflected a couple of 100 miles away in Austin by our state legislators. And so as I think about what we need help with, is that as we look to do the right things to support teachers and staff and individuals who are committed to ensuring that our students experience a world-class education while not seeing the results or that reflected in pay increases that we otherwise know should be something that we could consider, that we really invite our community to engage in discussions with their state elected officials as they think about things that are important to them. While we all appreciate lower taxes and we all appreciate greater homestead exemptions, we also appreciate an environment where students can learn and thrive regardless of where they come from, regardless of how they show up at our doors, and have that conversation with elected officials. We've talked as a board now, probably for as long as I've been on the board, about the challenges that we have, and we've talked about not trying to admire the problem, but trying to take every step that we can to mitigate it locally. And I think we are at a point where if things don't look different in the upcoming legislative session, we will be challenged beyond belief to provide the resources and the support that we've been committed to. And I think at that point, it is too late. And so inviting the community to be more involved, inviting the community to have conversations with elected officials and staff, inviting our community to really ask questions and hold elected officials in Austin accountable is something that we need more people to do. I can provide absolute assurance that the work that we are doing is probably shy of a miracle to ensure that we could continue to staff with incredible individuals who are committed to public education despite the things that are challenging them, and that our students ultimately are the greatest beneficiaries because they come to us without a voucher. They come to us without any kind of expectation, but ultimately a desire to learn. And so thank you for working so closely with Cabinet. Thank you for working closely with everybody who I don't know our community appreciates what we're doing. And I think for people to understand that when we talk about the challenging times, not to mistake the fact that we have high standards and a world-class environment with an equal amount of funding that's coming through. So I don't think we can say it often enough. When I got reelected in May, I think I made a commitment to myself that I would talk about this at every single meeting. And I think so far I've been able to do that. And so I think until we see something different, I don't think any of us should feel any reason not to talk about it as bluntly and directly with people who should be more accountable to doing something different. So thank you for keeping us the shining star. Thank you for making sure that we're taking all the steps that we can to be a world-class district. And I look forward to elected officials in Austin and the governor and the lieutenant governor to coming to terms with the fact that Texas, being a shining star, is going to be dependent on school districts across this state being adequately funded, and that's not something that we can compromise. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Trustee Sanchez. Go ahead.
Just to echo Trustee Sanchez, I know that, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure everybody would love to do more. But our financial constraints. But I said it a couple weeks ago, we're investing in our people because they provide the purpose to our students so they can fulfill their promise. So, I agree with you, Trustee Sanchez. We're going to be facing some challenges and, some tough decisions coming up in the next couple months. But, this is something that at least we're showing our employees that we support them. So thank you for the work that you do. I know a lot of crunches Also to echo Trustee Cheka, thanks for bringing back the step as well. It's something that we've done before, and you know, when the state gave us allocated funds last year, we weren't necessarily able to do that. So bringing that back to kind of help us, you know, get right-sized again in terms of where we fall in that salary pool is greatly appreciated. So thank you for the work that you've done. I know I've stopped by your office and I see the charts and I see everything going on. Dr. Branch, thank you for, you know, making sure that we have high valued individuals teaching our kids. Also, I know, please extend that to Ms. Henry as well. And I just wanted to acknowledge Brittany Moses for what she's doing with the teacher incentive allotment as well. That's a big help too. So just thank you for, you know, what you do, and that extends to cabinet as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Cunningham. All right. Go ahead.
I've been on the finance committee now for, this will be my 4th year, and what I've learned is that budgeting a school district is one of the near impossible tasks, and you do it with grace, you do it with a smile most of the time. And I really do appreciate it, and I want you to know that we on the finance committee realize how impossible of a job it is given all the unknowns, all the uncertainties. And so thank you for the work that you do for us.
All right. Thanks, Trustee McKay. All right. Any other questions and comments? Seeing none. Thank you both very much. We appreciate all that you do. And Jeff, I see you back there as well. Thank you for all the support. So we're ready to consider a motion.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move to approve the recommendation of superintendent for the 2026-2027 district compensation plan to be approved as presented.
Thank you, Vice President Cheka. And motions on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, and no opposed. Motion passes 7-0. All right, next up is our 2027 budget and proposed tax rate.
So, Ms. Benzai will just discuss the proposed scheduling of a public hearing to discuss the 26-27 budget and the 26 proposed tax rate.
Okay, so before the board may adopt the annual budget and tax rate, Texas law requires publication of a notice of public meeting, a public hearing to receive community input, and adoption of the budget before adoption of the tax rate. So the public hearing that we are asking to schedule it provides transparency and gives our community the opportunity to review the proposed budget and tax rate and provide comments before the board takes final action. At the public hearing, administration presents the proposed general fund budget, the debt service budget, and the child nutrition budget, along with the proposed maintenance and operations tax rate, proposed interest and sinking tax rate, with the financial impact on taxpayers with an opportunity for public comment. So we are recommending that the Board of Trustees schedule a public hearing to be held on August 24th at 6 p.m. for purposes of discussing and adopting the 26-27 budget and discussion of the 2026 proposed tax rate. The notice that will be published in the newspaper will contain a proposed tax rate for the maintenance and operations of 69.9 cents and an INS rate of 27 cents. And this rate remains unchanged from the 2025 tax rate. We're just today received all of our appraised values from the appraisal district. So Ms. Aragon has all sorts of calculations that she has to go through to get that notice. But those are the tax rates that we are anticipating, including on the notice that will be published in the paper. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Benzai. All right. Any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees schedule a public hearing to be held on August 24th, 2026 at 6 p.m. for the purposes of discussing and adopting the 2026-27 budget and discussion of the 2026 proposed tax rate.
All right. Thanks, Trustee McKay. All right, motion is on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, and no opposed, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Benzai. All right, it's 7:38. The board will now move to a closed session as authorized by the Texas Open Meeting Act concerning purposes permitted by the specific Texas Government Code sections listed on the agenda. All right. It is 8:57. I call this meeting back to order. And action on closed session. Consider adoption of resolution authorizing the sale of surplus real property. I entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I recommend the board adopt a resolution declaring us surplus and authorizing the sale of approximately 12 acres of district property in Harris County, Texas, as further described in the resolution.
All right. Thank you, Trustee McKay. And motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. And no opposed. Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. And item B.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Sanchez.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for Director of Special Programs, Ms. Heidi Danner.
Thank you, Trustee Sanchez. All right, motion on the floor. Any other discussion? No. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And no opposed. Motion passes 7-0 and go.
We're just excited that Ms. Danner is going to be filling that position. She is currently assistant director, and so moving into that position. Also, as we acknowledge this evening, I mean, she goes back and she's been in the district for 8 years, and she was actually elementary teacher of the year. So, you know, that experience, inclusion, she's done so many things for us. So we're a lot of relationships. She focuses on what the needs are of students, and we really welcome her into that position and look forward to it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Engel. All right, and at 8:58, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.